Direct from Kansas City, it's Comic Book Late Night with Captain Logan! Featuring brand new comic book reviews, thoughts on comic news, obscure character of the week, and a little something from the comic vault. And now, here's Captain Logan!
Hello everyone, I am indeed Captain Logan, and welcome once again to Comic Book Late Night. Now you're never going to believe this, but right here in my hands I have indeed Spawn number 200. That's right, I know, it's nuts, but here it is. Todd McFarlane, through and through, it's double-sized, but the question is it any good? We'll find out in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the real Manos. Now, Manos last week put up a really cool video about his thoughts on One More Day, which is, of course, one of the most notorious Spider-Man comics, really one of the most notorious comics to ever hit the page. And, of course, obviously that's kind of old news, but somebody requested that he do this video, and he did it, and it really put things back into perspective for me a little bit as a comic book fan, about why I love comics and why I got into comics in the first place. Manos showed off the first comic that he ever had, and it was an issue of Spidey stories. And what I want to do right now is do actually the same thing and show you the first comic book that I ever had. My first comic book, this is given to me by my dad, my first comic book was Action Comics number 687. And this was during the Reign of the Superman arc. This is right after the death of Superman and Funeral for a Friend and all of that. And it's astounding that this actually got me into comics because Superman's not actually in this issue. Things were so complicated in Superman at this point. I can't believe that I got really into this, but I think part of it was just I got really excited about this cover because, you know, it's got this cool emblem, and then you pop it open and there's the Eradicator, and I thought the Eradicator was really neat. And then you know, I got into all the different four Superman and trying to figure out which one was the real Superman and all that kind of fun stuff. I think ultimately though, it's just a big deal. It was just a big deal for me because it was the first. It was my first comic, and I think I have kind of the same thing that Manos did, where if anything were to ever happen to this, it would probably bother me more than if something happened to a lot of the other comics I had, because it's my first one. Manos was talking about how he doesn't know how much his Spidey stories comic books for, and whether it's worth any more than that first issue of One More Day. But to him, that first issue of One More Day is worth nothing, and the Spidey Stories comic is worth quite a bit to him personally. And I think I have kind of the same thing. And if my house was to ever like go up into flames, I imagine this is probably the first thing that I would grab. Wait a minute. Looks here that I have two copies of Action Comics number 687, which really begs the question as to which of these is actually the first comic book I ever owned. Bear with me for a minute. I'm going to pop this open and see if it bears any markings that might help me decide which of these is actually the first. Hold the phone. There's another one. Yep, that's 687 too. This is a variant cover. Okay. So I have three copies of Action Comics 687. Okay, well, I guess what this means is that the thing that Manos and I have in common is that we both have a first issue that we both ever had, and it means something to us. Okay, let me amend what I said then. If my house were to go up into flames, and if these, hadn't been all mass-produced and really easy to get, and if there was no such thing as eBay, and if every person who ever owned a Superman comic, like, keeled over and died right now, and if I didn't have, like, 5 local comic book stores where I'm sure I could find these in back issue bins, then I would probably be really, really upset. Well, anyway, go watch Manos' video, and it will probably make you feel something other than what I just did. Hey, I've got a really fantastic show for you tonight. I'm gonna review Spawn number 200. Also have the Real Plaid Rabit with me tonight, who's going to help me open up the comic book vault and review something cool there. That and more is coming up. But first, as promised, it's time for brand new comic book reviews. Alright, let's start straight away with the main event, Spawn number 200. Well, despite all those Todd McFarlane cracks last week, I've got to give him props for the fantastic art this issue, as well as the fact that he's gotten a new creative team together for the forthcoming issues that have apparently already finished the next 7, and he's promised 2 issues a month until the book is caught up. I can't help but respect that. Now, the issue itself is a mixed bag. On the one hand, it's a lot of pages of old-school Spawn art and lettering, the great stuff we've had for the last several issues that I've been raving about. Spawn's had colorful, detailed art again that made the book stand out in the beginning. I like how it's more formally handing the torch off from Al to Jim, and how what exactly happened when Al tried to commit suicide is being addressed and explained. Jim continues to be a breath of fresh air as Spawn, as we're watching a guy who isn't undead deal with Spawn's suit, and how everyone around him seems to be looking for ways to gain control of the suit, including Clown, who's been pretending to be Jim's friend and trying to avoid letting him see his Violator side. The Omegas, a powerful group of hell demons created by Al's attempted suicide, are an awesome threat, and between one of them, Clown, and the Freak, there's a grand battle that rages throughout the book that's a lot of fun to look at, but it's really hard to get a handle on what exactly is going on. Ultimately, it feels like the book wants to explain a lot of things, but it also wants to be memorable, so there's a lot of action. These two things never really seem to jive together, and McFarlane's dialogue is really wordy. My comic shop, by the way, has very few people with Spawn regularly on their pull list, and yet there was an entire rack of Spawn 200s with their various variant covers. I suppose Image expects to sell a lot of these, given that it's a landmark issue. The hope is probably that a lot of people who haven't bought Spawn in a long time will give this a shot, because it's a milestone, and then maybe they can hook them into continuing with the book. It's not a bad issue, but I kind of doubt that's going to work. I've been back on the book for a few issues, and there were places that even I was kind of lost. I don't think this is a great jumping on point, and for a landmark, there was a lot of setup. There was so much stuff about the mythos of the Spawn costume, and how it's becoming the most powerful thing in the universe. Exposition that in science fiction I'd call technobabble, but that doesn't quite fit, so the best thing I can come up with here is necrobabble. And for trying to be a really important issue, it had only one really big reveal, and I called that in the last issue, so it wasn't really that big of a deal for me. And I won't spoil it in case you want to be surprised, but if you've been reading, I'd be surprised if you didn't figure it out on your own. The art was absolutely worth the wait, but the story left something to be desired. Spawn is notorious for setting up more than resolving, and things really haven't changed that much. Now let's go on to Superman number 707. Well, we're back to the main Grounded arc, though JMS is no longer writing. Other writers are using his notes to finish his arc. I've been really patient with this, and I love the first issue, but my patience has run out. I'm sick of Superman dealing with real-world stuff, and I want him to fight some supervillains again. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that comics can't tackle important issues, but it's a visual medium, which means that they should do it in a way that it works on a comic book page. There's just nothing dynamic about watching Superman standing around arguing with factory workers about keeping people employed versus polluting the water. There was an explosion and Superman saved people. I don't know why he needs to get involved past that. I like the idea of Superman as a wandering philosopher, at least for a short time. But I thought at some point maybe a continuous story would emerge, and it really hasn't. The only thing holding these stories together is Superman walking around the country, and every couple issues, that gets interrupted and he has to fly somewhere. Other than the fact that he's doing this, every issue is a standalone story, and generally, they're pretty dull. I also hate what's done with Lois here, and actually Superman too. Superman, gasp, sees shades of gray in this factory issue, and Lois is appalled that he would even consider that the needs of the people in Smallville to keep their jobs and their homes might outweigh some environmental concerns.
He isn't saying it's right for the factory to go against codes and hurt the environment, as it apparently has been. He's saying it's a complex issue, and he's not sure what the right call is. So he tells her not to publish a story that will rat out the factory's leaders and potentially shut the plant down. And then she explodes at him. He's being whiny, saying he doesn't know what he believes anymore, and she's being completely closed-minded, and it's completely out of character. I felt the book was trying to express the complexity of an issue, but ended up just making its characters unsympathetic and two-dimensional by each simply representing a side of an argument, rather than acting like real people in a real situation. I found it boring and uninspiring, and I want to go back to New Krypton. Okay, now let's take a look at Red Robin number 19. This was all kinds of fun. A fantastically wacky adventure that managed to also be a little thought-provoking and not get too far away from the book's normal tone and Red Robin's characterization. Tim finds himself stuck in a virtual world with a wide cast of familiar characters, all presented in strange, sometimes surreal ways. Batman and Robin are their campy 60s versions. Joker is wearing a Robin suit. We get to see Metallo, Deathstroke, Captain Boomerang, and others. And the Riddler represents Tim's subconscious and gives him clues to his situation in the form of riddles, of course. Tim discovers he is in the Unternet, a version of the internet which was created by Darkseid as a way for villains to link their minds together and share information. It also makes anyone connected to it really angry, and Tim deduces that Darkseid probably expected this would help facilitate the destruction of the Earth faster. Each time Tim meets a villain, he can't be sure if he's fighting someone created by the Unternet or a villain that's plugged into it. It mostly serves as a twisted version of the DC universe, but it is a good adventure, as Tim has to figure out how to get out, and really cool things start to happen once he figures out how to get more control over his virtual environment. This is part of a larger arc started last issue, but it's a good read as a standalone, and if you like quirky DC stuff, I really recommend it. And now, for Daredevil Reborn, number 1. This is just what you'd expect. I wasn't hoping for much, and I was kind of disappointed anyway. Matt has left New York after the horrible things he did during Shadowland. There's no mention of Shadowland here, though, just that he's off walking and he's not thinking about anything that happened to him. I have expected him to run into Superman while he was wandering around the Badlands. Reading this out of context, it could easily be any time Matt Murdock is lost and soul-searching. It's a lot of retread, and I just felt like we've been here before. Matt finds a diner in the middle of nowhere. Some thugs show up and tell him to leave. They get in a fight, the cops tell him to get lost. He suspects something strange is going on, but he doesn't really care about it. And that's the whole plot. I don't even feel like I'm spoiling anything. Maybe things will get more interesting in the rest of the mini, but this issue is uninspiring. The art is depressing, and not in that cool, stylized Daredevil way. It's sketchy and bland, and I just didn't enjoy very much about it. The one thing I did like is a scene where Matt shows a blind Kit how to flip a coin and catch it, and that's about all I liked. I might read more Daredevil when he's the man without fear again, or at least when he's in a book with that in the title. And those are my comic reviews for today. And now, let's go on to some news. So on Sunday, I watched the first episode of The Cape, and thought I'd do a little mini review of it for you. I thought it was really quite good, actually. I really enjoyed it. I'd like to recommend it. The Cape is on NBC, and it's kind of their replacement for Heroes, which, if you know about the long history of Heroes, it started off great, got too popular, and it all went downhill from there. Heroes was talked about a lot, especially later as it went along, as being really pretentious and just trying too hard. And the Cape, it really feels like they've learned their lesson. Not that these are necessarily the same people working on this show, but NBC bought a show that is trying to do superheroes, and instead of trying to find a really modern, more realistic way of doing them, which everybody's been trying to do for the last few years, it really goes back to kind of old school and is trying to do superheroes in a more traditional type way, which is really great. When I first saw commercials for it, I thought it looked really uber generic. And happily, it's not. It's got a really neat cast of characters, and right out the gate, I just feel like it knows what it wants to be, and it's doing a really good job of being that. The first episode is, and on Sunday they showed 2 episodes. It wasn't really a 2-hour pilot so much as two episodes that they showed together. So the pilot, it really is like a full superhero origin in an hour. Frankly, it kind of feels like a superhero origin movie in 1 hour. It does a really good job of condensing all of that without feeling too forced or too rushed. The cape has a really cool reason for becoming a superhero, I think. And by the way, I'm not gonna say that this is a brilliant series or anything, but I don't think that it's necessarily trying to be. Like I said, I think that the goal is doing a traditional superhero on on television, doing a traditional comic book on television, and it really kind of feels that way. I like why he's a superhero. I like that nobody he knows or cares about died, and that's why he's a superhero. It picked another thing that has been done before, but a little bit less often, which is he gets framed. And actually, he gets framed, and everybody thinks he's the supervillain, which is neat. They think that he's a supervillain called Chess, but Chess is actually the big corporate tycoon guy, kind of a two-dimensional type stereotype villain, kind of. But hopefully, he'll get more dimension as it goes along. And anyway, everybody thinks that he's died, and so he ends up becoming a hero to try to take down Chess. And also so that he can inspire his son while he can't really be a father for his son anymore, which I thought was really good, and it's actually kind of touching. But anyway, it's fun. We finally have a superhero show on where we get to see heroes in costumes and supervillains in costumes, and it's a heightened reality. It borrows a lot from things that have come before it, but it really is kind of its own thing. It's got some Batman in it. It's got some Dick Tracy with some of the villains. There's a henchman called Scales who has scales all over his face, and I thought that was really Dick Tracy. It's got some Darkman in it, and things like that. And I even got a little bit of a Shadow vibe from it. It's got a really great cast. Summer Glau is in it, and she's fantastic. She plays probably my favorite character, and I don't even want to give away what her character is, because it's a neat reveal when we find out, and I really like the literary reference, so I won't even talk about that, but take a look. Do watch it. You can, by the way, watch it right now streaming on NBC.com, so take a look. And also, Keith David, the guy who voiced Spawn for the HBO Spawn series, he's in it. And he's fantastic. He plays the Cape's mentor. But anyway, I highly recommend it. I think it's a really fun show, and like I said, it's not real deep or anything. But if you want to watch something that's kind of escapist and nice, popcorn kind of show, that's totally what it is. And I've even seen a couple of early reviews saying that I borrowed that. It's a popcorn thing, but it totally is. Anyway, so take a look. The other piece of news I wanted to mention, I guess that's not exactly news, it's more of a review of a thing that just happened. But anyway, that just happened on Sunday. So the news is that premiered, and it was good, if you're me. And the other thing I wanted to mention is also television related, and that is that apparently, while we thought that maybe Wonder Woman was going to be brought back and be a live-action TV show again, it's not going to happen anytime soon. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, if you weren't hoping to see that happen. Basically, a pilot got written, and then it was shopped around to the various networks, and most of them passed on it, and then the CW couldn't afford it. So that's not going to happen. So anyway, that's my news for this week, and if you want to see more comic book news, check out Comic Book News with Duke and Eric weekly on Dukaloop's 1993's channel. And that's the news. And now, how about a trivia question? Today's trivia question is, what X-Man was referred to often as Slim by his friends in the earliest X-Men comics? Which X-Man was called Slim? Leave your answer in the comments below, and if you get it correct, the first person who gets it right, I will be sure and mention in the next episode of Comic Book Late Night, and I will give you a shout out for your channel. The question from last week was, what DC villain was called Vril Dox Vril Dox? And the answer to that, of course, was Brainiac, specifically Brainiac 2. And the person who got that correct first was Directing Dude 95. So props to you, and leave your answer for today's question in the comments below. Today's Obscure Character of the Week is brought to you by Stark Resilient. We've got no money, but Stark's in the title, so we're still awesome. Have you ever heard of Carcass? Well, Carcass is a Marvel character. He's a member of a race of beings who are an offshoot of humans called the Deviants, who first appeared in the Eternals number 8 and was created by Jack Kirby. Considered too ugly even for the Deviants, he was forced to fight in gladiatorial battles, but he's actually a brilliant thinker, and he was given a new life by the Eternals and became a scholar. I'm just trying to imagine this guy giving a college lecture on British literature. He's been in a few battles here and there, including one where he fought Thor and then fought with Thor, but that's about it. If you'd like to make a request for Obscure Character of the Week, or you've got maybe some fan art you'd like to show off, you got a question you'd like me to answer on the show, or anything, be sure to send me a message over our YouTube channel, Geekvolution. Send me a personal message, and I'd love to hear from you. And now, it's time to find out what's in the comic book vault. Okay, tonight on the Comic Vault, we're going to be taking a look at the first issue of Ben Edlund's The Tick, and to review the first issue of The Tick, I have invited my very good friend, the Real Plaid Rabit, as my guest this evening.
Hello?
Hey, how's it going?
Superbly.
The Real Plaid Rabit is a musician. He's a composer. He's all kinds of other things, and he's also a big fan of lots of really quirky comedic things, including The Tick.
Indeed.
And so here is the Tick Omnibus. This is the first Tick Omnibus, which collects the first few issues of the original 12-issue Tick series that started in '88, and usually we do single issues on the show, but I don't have this in single issues, so here's the trade, but we're just going to talk about the first issue. And how do you feel the first issue of the comic series introduces the character?
Well, it does what Ben Edlund does in his other incarnations of the Tick, which is throw the character at you without really introducing him in any way. He's just there. Each origin is a little bit different in the various incarnations, but you open the first page and there's the Tick. And he is this guy, and he has antenna, and he has the costume or not. He insists it is not a costume in all three incarnations, I believe. And he's just there, and we don't know where he came from, and we're not going to know where he came from.
He's in a straitjacket. He's in an insane asylum, and it says a lot that he just sits there and is bored, and then decides, oh hey, I could leave, and then he just leaves.
Yeah, his problem is not inability or confinement so much as this is no longer fun, and we don't know how he escapes, but
we just figure
he does.
He's this big 10-foot guy who continually says that he's nigh invulnerable. We don't need to know how he leaves. That's easy.
In fact, after that page, there is no more asylum and no more really reference to that, apart from occasionally the Tick saying things that point to some kind of strangeness of that type, or his previous destinies to become the Emperor of Greenland or whatever.
Right.
I like that.
Which was hilarious. Did you find the comedy to be quite a bit different than other incarnations?
The comedy in this is always subtle, and it's something I always liked about all of the Ticks. Perhaps this mostly. Edlund's sense of homage is very finely honed. I think in his first fight with ninjas in an apartment, the onomatopoeia for the battle includes
I was going to talk about
dodge,
that.
parry, thrust, spin, which is a reference to the Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck as Robin Hood and Friar Tuck.
That's right. And one of the onomatopoeia even is haiku.
And then he has haiku for them. or the panel where the Tick is in this scene that is a recreation of the Nighthawks, famous painting. That,
Right.
It alludes to things rather than just hitting.
Well, and him sitting in the
with
diner
jokes.
is also a painting.
Yes.
And they recreate that in the cartoon show. Some of the best jokes in this are things that I think would have been really cool to do in other places, and you just couldn't. And I think the Viewmaster is a great running gag.
Yes.
And it's kind of one of the Tick's big token things in the comics that they just can't use in other incarnations for probably obvious reasons, and I would imagine merchandising things. But I mean, like, he always wears it around his neck, and he keeps trying to look in it, and it's supposed to be his crime-fighting Viewmaster, and he looks in it, and he's
where
like...
Where did he get this? Where did it come from?
Who knows?
Why does he expect it to reveal anything useful to him? That makes me want to plow through more and find out whether, as I suspect, he will do something very funny with that. Because so far, every little odd thing like that Edlund has introduced, certainly this is how he did the cartoon, he does something with.
Mm-hmm.
He does not waste these. They're not throwaway gags. They're always things that he's going to go somewhere with.
But yeah, you see big homages, not just to famous more highbrow culture, which we were talking about, but of course naturally superhero stuff. And the big obvious one is the Superman thing.
Right.
Clark, who is the Cape Wonder, but of course you never see him become the Cape Wonder. He just
Clark Oppenheimer.
He just can never find a place to change. It's really well drawn, and yet it's really indie. And it's amazing, as much of an independent-looking book as it is, that it ever went anywhere.
It is. It is not very artistic drawing, I would say, and yet it is very high-level caricature. The details of line and shading are used to make the characters really look different from each other. They say things about the character. The skeptical guy that the Tick encounters in the diner, who doesn't believe he's a Tick and doesn't believe anything anyone says, in fact.
Yeah, which is one of the jokes they repeated in the cartoon show.
Is drawn with a very different sort of line than either the Tick or the fellow tending bar or any of the other patrons.
That's a great point. And the ninjas are drawn very differently too, right? Because they seem very two-dimensional, and they don't have a lot of dimension to them. There's not much detail. And then the Tick is drawn with a lot of detail.
Yeah, so he knows how to use art to say what he's trying to say and to tell the story he's trying to tell. And that's something I appreciated about his drawing. Each character is stylized in an individual way rather than having sort of a generic stylization that is simply to identify the artist, the way you see in current cartoons that are being made. I think of the things Cartoon Network's been doing for the last 10 years.
Right.
Where having a visual style is identifying the product instead of identifying characters or elements in the story. And that's something I like about Edlund's work here.
Well, we are all out of time for Comic Book Late Night tonight. I want to thank my guest, Real Plaid Rabit. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
And talking about the Tick. And I'd like to have you on again and talk about later issues. I thought every so often we could come in and do another... Sure. I thought about every so often we could come in and maybe progressively do another issue of the Tick, because I was wanting to get people to read it.
Absolutely, it's too little known.
It really is. And let me also mention that New England Comics right now is doing a current bi-monthly Tick series, which I've not read but heard great things about. And so do avail yourself of that if you can find it. And I want to thank Pop Culture Comics for which is of course where I got my comics this week in Overland Park, Kansas. Thank you very much for watching, and check us out again next week. We'll be doing this every Thursday, of course. And if someone ever offers you a piece of kryptonite, no matter what color it is, just say no. I'm Captain Logan, signing off.